Hey YouTube, this is Drew Howden Tech here to tell you why you should be using Linux in 2020. I made a video telling you why I switched from Windows to Linux and why you should too. This video reinforces why you actually should switch to Linux. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Number 10, compatibility. Now, I don't mean compatibility with software, I mean compatibility with hardware. More specifically, internal hardware. Why I say this is because there are a lot of older computers out there that cannot run the latest version of Windows. And the thing is, because Linux is so lightweight, it can work on a lot of older hardware. It'll even run smoothly on hardware that Windows will just struggle to run on or even not run on at all. You could pick out any generic laptop these days, and as long as it has no exotic hardware, you could expect everything to work with Linux just fine. And there's also another point about compatibility that I want to make. It's versatility. It can support pretty much any use case. Yeah, that's why I see it a lot in servers. Because hey, if for example you wanted to set up a computer as a home media server, well, it wouldn't make sense to put Windows on it. So you might go with a server Linux distro like Ubuntu Server that's made specifically for home media servers. And there are a lot of Linux distros like Lubuntu that focus on being lightweight. Lubuntu can run on pretty much anything. Could probably even run on a toaster if you so chose. Number 9, free and open source software. There's a lot of free and open source software out there for Linux. Open source means people can view and modify the source code. Now, of course, people do police each other with that, which I find makes it safer than proprietary software, meaning that that's closed source, meaning that you cannot see the source code and updates are dependent on the vendor, which then the vendor can abuse that to create malware. There's a lot more free and open source software out there for Linux. Of course, you can, get paid even proprietary software for Linux, but there's just a lot more free and open source software, which is great because Windows users are so used to paying for everything and everything being closed source. And one more comment I want to make about open source software is that you're free to basically do anything you want with it. You're not bound by one of those end user license agreements that tell you what you can and can't do. Number 8, customizability. You can customize Linux pretty much to the individual file, depending on how involved you want to get with it. There's a lot of different looks and feels with Linux. This is what my desktop looks like. Look at this. This is what my theme looks like. Looks like I have it looking like macOS in dark mode. That's how I like to put things, but you can make your Linux desktop look like anything you want. In fact, part of the reason why there are distributions, it's their own kind of flavors of Linux. I think of distribution as kind of a starting point, and then you can build upon that with customizability. Number 7, updates. Linux is a much better system when it comes to updates. Seriously, in Linux, there are no updates until you say so. And thing is, most of the time, an update will not even require you to restart your computer, unlike Windows updates, which always force you to do this. In fact, with Windows updates, it forces it on you. There are some times when you do need to restart, but even then, it doesn't take a long time. It doesn't take half an hour. The amount of downtime you'll experience is just as long as a regular restart. Number 6, bloatware. Linux distributions have a lot less bloatware. With Windows, there's a lot of pre-installed and built-in software that you cannot remove without a pretty solid understanding of how Windows works. Linux, you can remove pretty much anything you want to. A piece of bloatware that comes pre-installed in your Linux distro, just take it off, delete it. Windows, it doesn't give you the option to do that. Number 5, package management. Linux package management system is just so much more secure than Windows. You have little app stores that give you a list of software that you can just download and install with just a couple clicks. And hey, it's not in the package manager, you just add a repository. That's the thing. Package managers just do all the work for you. And the package managers that come with Linux distros are monitored, meaning that if you find a piece of software in your package manager, it's guaranteed to be safe. Number 4, stability and efficiency. Linux is just so much more stable and efficient than Windows. Yeah, with Windows, you got a billion services running in the background. Linux, you don't even have that. You don't have all the bloat that's hogging up your system. And you sure as heck don't have any of that reporting back to Microsoft's crap. Yeah, you have a lot of resources free in Linux. With Linux, you can basically juice a lot out of your computer, a lot more than you can with Windows. Mostly because it uses such an old kernel. I just find it very slow and resource heavy, which that's great for people that just want a very fast experience on a possibly low-end machine. Number 3, maintenance. Linux is easier to install and maintain than Windows. The only reason why so many people use Windows is because 1, people have been using it all their lives, and 2, it comes pre-installed in like 99.9% of pre-built computers, so the consumer does not have to worry about installation and maintenance. But the thing is, like, you don't need an antivirus for Linux, which I'll get into that later in this video. You don't need to change a lot of settings. You need to work to take control of updates. Like, you don't need to work with Windows features. You don't have a lot of that stuff. And you don't have to worry about drivers. This is just so much easier to maintain. Number 2, privacy. You have a lot better privacy in Linux than Windows. I'm just saying. Microsoft and Google do not care about your privacy. A lot of Linux distros don't have telemetry. If you use a Linux distro like Ubuntu that does have it, like, sure, it may be enabled by default, but you can disable it, like, just with one click. Windows, like, there's no way to turn it off fully. Even if you don't enable Cortana, switch your telemetry settings to basic, and don't create a cloud-based Microsoft account. You can enjoy a lot better privacy in Linux. Like, come on. You have the right to privacy on your own computer, don't you? Number 1, security. Connecting your Windows PC to the internet using the default settings is like leaving your front door wide open with all your valuables sitting there on the coffee table. Linux closes and locks the door and hides the key. And you can even get it to store your valuables in a safe that only you know the combination to. And hey, before any major changes happen to Linux, you have to type in your password. That's right, you're the decider. And it's also more secure because of a package management system that cannot be as easily abused as Windows. Windows has done some stuff to mitigate the security risks, but it's just not enough. Yeah, Linux has a lot of protections in place to prevent viruses from infecting your system, like applications run in a lower privilege mode by default. Like, you have to download, install, configure, and maintain such basic protection on Windows. Those are my 10 reasons why you should be using Linux in 2020. The 2 distros I'd recommend for a beginner are Ubuntu and Linux Mint. Like, I'd say that those are the most beginner friendly. Like, don't just choose a Linux distro and hope for the best. Like, I'd say just stick with the 2 that I mentioned until you feel confident to get your hands dirtier. Yeah, there might be some software that doesn't work with Linux, but unless you have like a specific feature that you need, like, for example, backup and restore with iOS devices, you could look for Linux alternatives. And worst case, you could use a VM or even dual boot your operating system. You only need to worry about compatibility like with external hardware. And software compatibility, don't let that part deter you. Anyway, if I missed anything, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. And also, be sure to like those useful comments so we build up a repository of useful information. And if you liked this video, hit the like button, share this video with your friends, subscribe to the channel,